Give it to me, boy. Oh my god, it's a bone.
It's the body of Mary Downton.
Oh my god, murder! Murder!
Oh my gosh!
Burned. Murder! Oh no! What are we going to do? It must have been bigger.
Oh, here's an earring!
An earring? What? So this is the moment when everything starts to go wrong for Bigger. All of his plans start to come crashing down.
I feel like it's a little frustrating, especially for the reader, because Bigger knew that someone might find the bones in the furnace, and the whole time he's been trying to cover it up and cover it up. And he always knew that he should check to see if Mary's body had burned completely, but he never did. He was always afraid to, so he just kept putting it off and covering it up, putting more coal on the fire, and then we've all just been waiting for this moment to happen when it finally just comes crashing down.
Yeah, and then this is like the moment that finally the fearful procrastination from Bigger comes back to hurt him, which I think is really important for that to happen.
Yeah.
I also think the scene is interesting because before Bigger thought that everything was going so well and he had successfully framed Jan and no one had traced the ransom note and back to him, and he was relatively safe, but then the scene completely turns the tides on him and all of a sudden he's just in mortal danger.
Yeah, it really shows how everything can go wrong. And also going along with that, it's shocking how much of the scene shows the way that white people in the book, their idea changes of Bigger. Before they found out that Bigger killed Mary, they assumed he was the quiet, humble black servant. But after they find out he kills Mary, the media and the white people in general immediately brand him as the opposite stereotype, evil, ruthless, and hateful.
Yeah. It's like Bigger can either fit into one of two stereotypes, like both of them are terrible. The humbly inferior one, or like the evil criminal stereotype, and there's no in between for him. And so this is the scene where they find Mary's body, and that's when the white world kind of makes the switch from seeing Bigger as this servant to seeing him as a killer, and that turns out to be really dangerous for him.
Yeah, and this scene is really an important turning point in the book, and I think Richard Wright does a really good job of making the scene really the turning point that this book needs.
Yeah. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Never in my life have I risen in court to make a plea with a firmer conviction in my heart. Every conceivable prejudice has been dragged into this case. Still, I will face this court. I plead with you to see a mode of life in our midst, a mode of life stunted and distorted, but possessing its own laws and claims, an existence of men growing out of the soil prepared by the collective but blind will of 100 million people. Hemmed in, limited, circumscribed, Bigger Thomas sees and feels no way of acting except to hate and kill that which he thinks is crushing him. Your Honor, consider the mere physical aspect of our civilization. Oh, how it seems to dangle within easy reach of everyone the fulfillment of happiness. Now imagine a man walking amid such a scene, a part of it, and yet knowing that it is not for him. In normal circumstances, there would have been no murder, but the way we have treated this boy made him do the very thing we did not want. Or am I wrong? Maybe we wanted him to do it. This boy's crime was not an act of retaliation by an injured man against a person who he thought had injured him. This is a case of a man's mistaking a whole race of men as a part of the natural structure of the universe and his acting toward them accordingly. The prosecution has shouted, stormed, and threatened, but he has not said why Bigger Thomas killed. He has not said why because he does not know. The truth is, Your Honor, there was no motive, as you and I understand motives, within the scope of our law today. Listen, what Bigger Thomas did early that Sunday morning in the Dalton home and what he did that Sunday night in that empty building was but a tiny aspect of what he had been doing all his life long. He was living in the only way he knew how. It was an act of creation. You cannot kill this man, Your Honor, for we have made it plain that we do not recognize that he lives. So I say, give him life. I ask in the name of all we are and believe that you spare this boy's life.
Incredibly moving scene, wasn't it?
Yeah, the main points brought forth by Max are really enlightening. They're really interesting, and I think they kind of like shine a light on the major themes in the book.
Yeah, it is unfortunate though that Max's words are completely disregarded and overshadowed by the prosecutor's ignorant argument.
Yeah. Well, with the time period though that the novel is set in, it would make sense that most of the people will not understand, hate, or ignore Max's argument.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think, do you think such an argument as Max's would be accepted in the 21st century?
I think it would. I also think that the newspaper headlines and prejudices in this case would be far different, and the public opinion would be also. I think that Max's arguments would be far more understood nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
But and I think Richard Wright would agree with this. This situation wouldn't even happen in the 21st century because of the lack of extreme racism shown. Like, because this book was set in the 30s.
Yeah, and Max brings up another point which I thought was really interesting. He mentions a time when the whole black population would revolt together, a hypothetical time, and that is a perfect prediction of what happens about 20 years later after the book is set. And that was like the civil rights movement of the 1960s. So Max kind of prophesizes that in his speech.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, very interesting prediction.
Bigger Thomas, here's your attorney, Mr. Max.
Hello there.
Mr. Max, you ain't to blame for what's happening to me.
Bigger, anything you want me to do?
Nah. Remember them questions you asked me? They really made me think. You treated me like a man. Why?
Yes, well, of course, Bigger. You're human. I try to look at the world in a way that shows no whites and no blacks. No civilized and no savages.
But at night, I saw something new. I saw something in myself, something in everyone else.
Bigger, you made me realize how badly men want to live.
I know I'm going to die. That's all right now. I never wanted to hurt nobody. I hurt folks because I had to, that's all. They was crowding me too close. I know them folks hated me, but do you reckon they was after something? Just like me?
Bigger, you're going to die.
Action.
You see them buildings out there? You know what keeps them from falling down? It's the belief of men. If men stopped believing, they'd come tumbling down. Those buildings sprang out of the hearts of men like you, Bigger. Bigger, think of when you told me you wanted to do a lot of things. What you felt and wanted keeps those buildings from toppling down. When men desire, the buildings grow. But the buildings have stopped. Men like you have ceased to desire. They feel that it's not their world. They have nothing. Men who own those buildings are afraid. They want to keep what they own. In order to keep it, they push others down in the mud and tell them that they're beasts. It doesn't matter to them. They single people by hiring them and not paying enough. They take what people own to build power. They rule and regulate life. They have things arranged so they can do it. But men, like you, get angry and try to re-enter. Bigger, you killed. That was not the way to do it. Bigger, you're going to die. Die free. Every time you try to believe in yourself, your own mind stands in the way. It's because others have said that you were bad and made you live in bad conditions. It made you doubt. You have to believe in yourself, Bigger.
I'm alright, Mr. Max. Tell Ma I'm alright. Wow, what a moment.
Agreed. Bigger really shows his understanding of what happened to him throughout.
Yeah, saying that he's been crowded all of his life really shows the vast oppression that he's been subject to.
Also, Bigger saying that he and others were after something shows that the reason Bigger killed and why he is being killed by authority is because he and the other people desperately crave a sense of purpose in life.
Yeah. It's truly meaningful and shows that everyone is after something. Some people kill because they're after that purpose in life.
Bigger claims that he is what he killed for, and what he killed for is that craving of purpose, and that craving of purpose kind of like defines him in his entire life.
Yeah, and don't forget what Max said. Max explained that fear drives oppressors to oppress, whatever form that oppression may assume. However, it's the desire and aspiration of the oppressed that keeps the buildings from falling.
Yeah, that was a really powerful analogy. He's saying that the desire for more causes the oppressed to work, and thus making the buildings grow. And then the oppressors get the money even though the oppressed did all the work. It really shows how cruel the social system of this time was, and how fair the system in America still is.
Overall, this scene of Max and Bigger's conversation reveals a multitude of things about Bigger, and how killing strangely gave him a sense of purpose that he had been desperately craving his entire life. Max also portrays the cruel social system of oppression in this time, and how it relates to Bigger, in this case, the oppressed.
Bigger Thomas's story opens our eyes to the damage that systemic racism can do to the lives of countless people in our communities. These 6 scenes do an especially great job of showing how the racism and fear Bigger grew up with influence all of the bad, illegal decisions he makes later on. From the start, the rat and the airplane scenes show us how Bigger feels trapped and afraid in his life, and that fear causes him to accidentally murder Mary and to frantically cover up all of the evidence. Max realizes this, and he tries to explain it to the judge during the trial. Unfortunately, the judge doesn't understand. Bigger is sentenced to death. But after reading Native Son, we can understand. Bigger's heartbreaking story makes us realize that our society's stereotypes can be life-threatening. So, the next time someone does something wrong, let's take a closer look. Is it all their fault, or is our society partly to blame for raising them in conditions that would cause them to act out?